Hey BC, this is Luke with Hot Wax and Cool Vinyl. Welcome back. This is our fifth installment in my top 100 albums. Very quickly, I want to recap. I choose my albums based on emotion that the record brings or memory that the record brings me, as opposed to simply just the record itself, the popularity of it, etc. This is our fifth installment, numbers 60 through 51. So without further ado, because I am going to diligently try to keep these a little shorter than the last few that we did. Coming in at number 60, Jesus Christ Superstar, the soundtrack. For those of you who aren't really familiar with the soundtrack or Frank Lloyd Webber's score, this is absolutely a stunning piece of work. For me, it is brings me back to a summer spent in Italy. In particular at my grandmother's country house, if you will, in a little town just south of Rome. And it was just one of those really great little adventures that one has as a young man. In this case, I guess I was 12, so everything was like new and shiny and cool, and it was just really great. And Jesus Christ Superstar had just been released that year, and the soundtrack was, basically top of the charts everywhere, and so you keep hearing it over and over again. And all the older cool kids were really listening to it and really dug it. And because I was from the United States, they kind of took me under their wing and asked me to translate the words. So that summer, even though I was I guess I was 10, 11 years old, whatever it was, I spent a lot of time with all the older kids, helping them understand Jesus Christ Superstar. So aside from the fact that it's a great score and a really wonderful album and absolutely really good movie to watch, it's really a great record, and it brings back a really interesting memory. And it is completely coincidental that it's on Easter weekend that this one comes in at number 60. At 59, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's Deja Vu. I was not a large Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young fan at all in the mid-70s. And this one comes in. It actually is a very solid record, well written, very melodic, just a solid album through and through. Although when it was out and it was popular, I despised it with every fiber of my being. So why is it in my top 100? Well, this was the album that I don't know who she is now. I don't know her name. She was a niece of my next door neighbor when I was 14 years old, and she kept talking about this album incessantly, and it just to appease her, I said, fine, bring it over and I'll put it on my record player. And so she did. And even though I liked the record, I was such a stubborn little kid that I insisted throughout the entire record just how gosh awful this record was. So this comes in at number 59 for that memory. The stubbornness of a young teenage male who refuses to acknowledge he actually likes a record just because. how I made it to 55 is beyond me. I don't know. At number 58, I mentioned in the last 10 that Southern Rock I was turned on to, and I highlighted Molly Hatchet, and all said Molly Hatchet was a great band, but it wasn't the band that got me into Southern Rock. This band was. Charlie Daniels Band, Million Mile Reflection, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. So, I'm willing to wager that I'm not the only one in the VC who got turned on to Southern Rock by that particular song. It made playing the violin cool. That's a hard thing to do. But it made it cool. And this song, when it came out, had a very different sound. And, it was just very, it's not as hard driving as, let's say, a Skinner track or certainly not Molly Hatchet, but still, it had such a different twang and southern style to it, but it still was up-tempo enough where it caught my attention, and it caught my attention in a big way. And I was in my dad's restaurant when this came out, and I was working in Dad's restaurant with my mom, my dad, and my brother. And man, this thing came out, and it was just that whole time period. And I guess it came out in the fall. Out by us, it debuted, and it just kind of got a lot of airplay, and it just for 6 months. That's all really I played. I mean, it's just great. And it was just it brings back some fond memories of time spent with my family in our restaurant on Long Island, out in rural America, as it were, and it just resonated. And it also got me onto all the other Southern rock that I went on to dig, from Skinner to the Outlaws to Molly Hatchet. Roger from Jolly Roger did a contest entry for Andy's Vinyl Den 777s and needed some Southern rock. If you get a chance, scoot over to his channel and check out that video. He's got some pretty interesting and pretty solid Southern rock bands that he highlights. I digress, as I promised I would not do. 57, Blues Brothers. Man, these guys are amazing, and they just, if you were fortunate enough to have seen them when they did when SNL, they created the SNL Blues Brothers skit, before the album came out, before the movie came out. It was so fresh, and they just worked so well together. This album is on here, and it comes in at number 57. Again, because of an emotion, and it's really simple. When this album came out, I was a sophomore in high school, and I was had the good fortune to be able to hang out with a bunch of seniors, and they always let me tag along, even though I assure you I was probably the most annoying of the group by far. But we would go bowling occasionally, and one of the cooler times was we're going bowling, and these guys are, and we're driving to the bowling alley, and the song Rubber Biscuit comes on, and the entire car starts singing Rubber Biscuit, and it was just so funny, and it was hysterical, because it was basically a bunch of 17 and 18-year-old guys on the way to a bowling alley, screaming parts to a song at the top of their lungs, which is, it's just a great memory. And this is actually a legitimately good album, a legitimately great record, leaving aside the movie. These guys had a lot of A-list players playing for them. I mean, Tom Scott. I mean, they had a lot of really top-end players. So if you get a chance and can get past Dan Aykroyd and Belushi and just sit there and you know, listen to it, you will start realizing just how great a blues record this is. And, you know, it's the classic Chicago blues style. I mean, that's what they were going for, and that's what they achieved. Okay, so on to number 56. 56 is an album I highlighted for my record collection's Rob Z's contest. It's called The Fabulous Poodles. Never mind the F, it's just my alphabetation. The Fabulous Poodles Mirror Star is a compilation album of the Fabulous Poodles. I chuckle because they actually have 3 albums, so I'm thinking a compilation album of 3, maybe a little bit self-aggrandizing, but I digress. Really good power pop, early British new wave with just enough of an edge. They had a little bit of a minor hit stateside with a song called Mirror Star, which is the title track of this record. But it's on here because a man who is now one of my 2 closest friends, and I tease him because I think he has probably the most dreadful taste in music I've ever seen. But one of the things he loves to do is blind buys based solely and exclusively on album covers. And then probably will tell you about how great they are, no matter how terrible that album might be. And this is just an ongoing adventure to this day, even when we go picking together in flea markets. So he finds this album, he buys it first, and he tells me, I was like, Luke, I'm telling you, this is a great album, you're going to love it, you got to buy it, you got to go out. And by now I have spent enough money on his recommendations to know enough not to do exactly what he's telling me to do. So I'm like, all right, Ed, let me borrow your record. So he lends me his copy of the Fabulous Poodles, and you know what? He was right. This really is a really solid power pop, British new wave pop, first generation new wave record. And it's on my list, A, because Cav is always wrong, and for the one time he was right. Ed, if you ever get the chance to watch this, I'm going to admit it. Yes, you were absolutely right. Fabulous Poodles, great album. You'll probably never hear me admit it again. But it's a great record, and if you get a chance, just give it a listen, give it a try. If you like new wave, I think you'll really dig this album. It's, like I said, really early British new wave, so it's got a lot of those rough edges that made new wave so attractive, a little smoother than you'd find in early Clash stuff. So it was kind of like the step after punk, but it still had enough of an edge where it's a fun listen. Okay, on to number 55, the Electric Light Orchestra. A lot of records I could have selected from ELO. I really enjoy ELO a lot. I chose this because of the cover and the feeling that this gave me and why I bought it. I might be mistaken, but I think this was my first ELO purchase. If it wasn't my first, it was my second. And I just loved the gatefold cover so much, and I loved ELO so much, and I thought they were just so out there. And so here I am, and I remember that feeling of I have to have this record because the cover is so cool and so great. And I am more than just a bit of a nerd when it comes to sci-fi stuff. I always have been, and I probably will continue to be as long as I'm able to breathe. So this was one of those ELO, I like their stuff anyway, and it came out and I had to have it, and that is why it's on here. that emotion, that visceral, I have to have that album and will do what I need to do to buy it. I'll save my money. I'll annoy my parents until they drive me to the mall, which is what I did, to buy this album. And that just emotional attachment to this cover, this amazing artwork on this cover, and it's just a great record, and just a really wonderful memory for me anyway. And if you're not familiar with Yellow, I'm sorry. You really should be. 54, the Kinks. Yeah, okay, so it's probably one of their worst, if not one of the top 3 worst albums ever. But this comes out, and I'm a junior in high school, going to my senior year, where I'm about to be a senior, so that's summer, and I just got my license, and this album is out, and the Kinks are on top of their game because they had released Low Budget just a couple of years ago, so they the year before, and so they're really, they're on the radio, they're on the pop charts all over the place. And Low Budget was my entry into the Kinks. I really didn't know much about them other than that. And obviously some of their larger hits from them, You Really Got Me, and I knew that only because of Van Halen. So I buy this album, and it's a cool cover, it's a cool album, and it's, that summer, as I'm going to be a senior in high school, so I had my license, I'm driving around, I'm going to the beach with my friends, and this album is on the radio, and I'm playing it, and I have the record, and I turned it into a cassette like everybody else did. And so, yeah, that summer of I guess it would have been summer of 1980. Great summer. And so this album reminds me of that anticipation of about to be a senior in high school. So, you finally get to be the upperclassman, and you want it. So, great record. Well, I shouldn't say great record. Cool record, great cover, great poster, and I love the version of Victoria on this album more than I do on the studio edition. I don't know why, I just do. So if you get a chance, check out the cover of the version of Victoria they do on this record, and tell me what you think of it. Where are we? We are at number 53. 53, summer of 83. Billy Idol. His debut record as a solo artist. He had a couple of issues with Gen X, but fun fact about Billy, he's a Long Island kid who was born here on Long Island. He moved to the United Kingdom, became a singer in the United Kingdom, and came back to the island. So we're going to claim him as one of our own. White Wedding, 1983, I guess it was. When was this album released? This album was released in 83. It was on the charts for, I'm guessing, the entire summer. It was just such a great album. And it's one of those, great video to go along with a great album. So why is it on this, Luke? You're always talking about, it brings you back to something. Well, this record brings me back to my cassette deck in my first car got fried. But I wanted to listen to White Wedding bad enough, where I borrowed my buddy's boombox and put it on the front seat of my Chevy Chevette. Yeah, I'm not proud of that either. And I'm blaring this thing as I'm putting $20 of gas or $10 of gas, whatever it was, in the Chevette, with the boombox sitting in the front seat, and playing Billy Idol in a gas station in a rural Long Island town And oh my God, what a what a horrible example of youth I must have been at that time. That poor gas station attendant. I have no idea who you are, sir, but I apologize all those years later for that. But so that's why this is on there. Okay, so we are down to number 52. 52 is AC/DC's TNT. Very, very easy for me to remember this one. Same buddy of mine who turned me on to Warren Zevon. He was a year older than me, and we used to shoot pool. We used to love going to pool hall, one of our local pool halls, and we shoot pool. We weren't very good at it. We were pretty bad. But we just liked each other's company, and it was really just a lot of fun to go shoot pool with Steve. And on our way home, one summer afternoon, the song TNT comes on, and way different than most of the rock cuts I'd heard at that point. And Bond's got a very, very particular voice, and it was just kind of like driving force, and it was different. And we looked at each other, and I said, "What do you think?" And he goes, "I like it." "And what do you think?" "I'm really not sure, but I think I like it." And we had no idea who the band was. And finally the DJ came out and he said, "So that's TNT by AC/DC." And we're like, "Okay, let's go check out who these guys are." And so that was the first introduction to AC/DC. And my buddy's T-Bird coming home from shooting pool, with the two of us looking at each other going, "I'm not going to say I like it until you say I like it." Until you say you like it. So number 52 is TNT. And finally number 51. This one is two things about this record. It's Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. I don't have the cover for this one. I'll explain why in a second. This is one of my gems that I'm going to highlight later. This is the UK mono pressing of Yellow Submarine. It was not available in the United States then, nor has it ever been available in the United States that I am aware of. I was able to purchase this amongst a collection of records from a very, very nice gentleman who lives locally here. But the reason it's on here, the side, that was my bragging about it was a side note, because I'm really, this is one of my gems in my collection. But it's on here because when I was a very young boy, I saw the movie Yellow Submarine. Purely by accident, not by choice, had no idea what it was, didn't care, wasn't looking to go see it. I was spending time with my dad, and I had to be, I don't know, 10, maybe a little younger, maybe 9, maybe a little younger than that, maybe 8. And there's a group of family people, of my family, my dad and his brother and my aunts and my uncles. Anyway, they were all going to the movies. And apparently they wanted to see a movie that was rated R. And can't have an 8-year-old kid in an R-rated movie. So my dad, the movie playing in the movie theater adjacent was Yellow Submarine. So my dad and I watched Yellow Submarine. I'm sure he was he wasn't a Beatles fan. He hated cartoons. So I'm sure he was absolutely livid at the fact that he was sitting there watching Yellow Submarine. As far as I'm concerned, I had no idea. Again, I didn't know who the Yellow Submarine. I didn't know who the Beatles were. But I, to this day, remember sitting there in a movie theater in Queens watching Yellow Submarine with my dad. And, you know, I must have had a good time because I still remember it. So that comes in at number 51. I tried to keep it short. I went a little long. Again, I apologize. I don't like to do exceptionally long videos because it's difficult to watch a 25-minute video. Happy Easter to everyone. Have a great week. I'm going to try to do a couple of videos during the Easter break. I got some time before I go back to work, and so I want to get a couple in. And so I'm going to bid you adieu for the moment. Again, have a wonderful Easter, everyone. Happy Sunday. Have a great week. I'll speak to you soon. Cheers, guys and girls.